welcome to Dad Space. My name is Dave. How are you? Are you doing good? Hey, it's 2023 already. I don't know if you noticed, but it's a new year and we're back for Dad Space. I'm happy to be here with you. Happy New Year, happy Dad. We talked about this, right? Yeah, we talked about this. It's Dad Space. Today we're going to be talking about money. Ooh. Show me some of that sweet, sweet money. We have Dave Chudyk on today. Dave is here to talk about how as dads we can be good with our money, good with our family, be a good example, teach our kids some great financial lessons, set our families up for success in the future. This is Dad Space. This is the podcast that you're going to listen to more than once. I promise. Here we go. So Dave is on today. He's a podcast host. He hosts the Weekly Wealth Podcast. Links in the show notes. You know how we do this, right? You're not new. Dave is here and he is a financial planner. He helps people make sense of their money. And I think as a dad, we need to do better to be an example, on how to spend our money and how to take care of our families, take care of ourselves, not be living with more month than money. We need to be a good example ourselves. There's a lot of things in here we need to learn personally and start with that right off the bat. That is something that you and I need to do from this episode before we even think about talking to our family about their role in finances around the home. Number one is you and me stepping up, realizing where we could be better and how we can do that. This podcast episode is going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the basics of money. We are going to talk about vanity purchases. We're going to talk about real estate, credit cards. When should your kids get a credit card? And what are the rules around this that we should put in place from a dad's perspective? This is a great episode. Dave is going to share lots with you. And like I said earlier, this is an episode that I would suggest that you listen to more than once. This is going to be one of those examples of evergreen content that just stays out there and it is available to you in the future. Come back here and reference this again in the future. Let's make some plans to be better with our money here on Dad Space. Welcome, Dave, to the podcast. Here we go. Welcome to the podcast. This is Dad Space, and I have a fellow Dave joining me. And I always like talking to another Dave. Who wouldn't want that? Dave is with me today. We're going to be talking about finances and how, as dads, we can set our kids up for success in the future. And Dave comes with a lot of wisdom, background. He does this for a living, and he can help us today get our finances in order. Dave, thank you for being part of the podcast. Welcome, welcome. Nice to have you here.
I'm really excited to be here. So I hold two roles. I'm a dad. I have a 19-year-old who is, he's a sophomore in college, best kid in the world, doing really, really well. And then I have twin 15-and-a-half-year-olds. So I've been through having twin newborns. So whenever anybody tells me, they have a baby and they haven't gotten any sleep, I'm like, yeah, I had two at once. So you get no sympathy from me. But I know how important it is being a dad is such an important role. And it's kids that don't have a strong father figure. It's not that they can't have success in life, but they certainly have some obstacles that kids that have dads don't. And then also just how we all handle our money plays just such an incredible role in the quality of our lives. So when you put those two together, I'm hoping that you and I can really have an impact and maybe even change some lives today by what we're going to talk about.
I love it. Okay, so if you're watching this, you're going to see a great background for Dave here because he is a podcaster, which is another great thing about having Dave on. Dave, tell us about your podcast and why are you doing it and who do you hope to reach with your podcast?
Yeah, so I host the Weekly Wealth Podcast, and our tagline is we talk about the mindsets, the tactics, and the strategies to help you to build and maintain wealth. And I don't define wealth as a certain dollar amount, because I've known a lot of people with a lot of money that were miserable and maybe even in bondage to a job. Or so wealth is it's the ability to help people, it's freedom, it's flexibility, it's all those things, and how we handle our money and our attitudes about money really can just enhance our quality of life, or it can hurt it. I've heard it said before that whatever you are, Dave Campbell, money will either amplify it or positively or negatively. So if you're a nice person that's generous, and let's say you run into money, you're going to be more nice and more generous because you'll have more resources. If you're a jerk, you're going to use your money that just makes you look like more of a jerk. So you might have just super flashy stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with stuff, but if your heart is making you have that because you want to feel like you're better than other people because you have nicer stuff, nicer cars. And so then you're going to be more of a jerk because you'll have more money to be more of a jerk with. So our personalities and our values are amplified by money, right? So let's all accumulate money. Let's be valuable to society. Let's be wise with our money. And then let's use our money to make our lives and the lives of those around us just better. A better life is a really, really good thing. I don't know if you're like me, but I've had periods in life where, you know what, there were bills due and no money. And those are hard times. And I've had other times where money's just under control and there weren't really very many money issues. Those are just better times. So let's all work to get our money in order, and let's have better lives, less stress, and make the world a better place.
So there's people listening, Dave, and they're at that point. There's more month than there's money. There's bills sitting on the kitchen table that haven't been able to be paid. There's just a struggle to put food on the table. Things are tough right now for around the world. Mm-hmm. And here in North America, there's a lot of stuff going on, and trying to just be there for your family and support them financially is tough. Take us back to a point for you personally when there was more month than money, and tell me about how did that feel for you as a dad trying to provide, or you as in your community and who you are. How did it feel to not be able to meet those expectations financially?
Sure. So back in 2008, I was in the same business, and that's when revenue, the global economy almost collapsed, and our office's revenue really took a dive. And I remember there was about 12 weeks where I worked, and we had let somebody go because of revenue reasons. So I'm doing the job of two people at least, and I literally had no paycheck. Like, business just didn't have enough money to pay me for 8 or 10 or 12 weeks, whatever it was. So those are hard times. And there are a couple things that we can all do. Well, number one, we all have to be always preparing for the hard times. And that's hard. It's difficult. But when COVID hit, yes, the stimulus checks and everything came out, but the people who had a little bit of a slush fund, they were able to survive until the stimulus checks got there. The people who didn't have a few dollars in the bank, they struggled. So it's not that you're good or bad if you don't have money. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is we all need to strive towards, preparing for the bad times, because bad times always happen. They happen to low income people, high income people, everybody. So there's that. And then, as men, I think whether it's right or wrong, whether it should or shouldn't, we do equate a lot of our self-worth with money, like how much, not necessarily kind of the getting rich, glamorous, I have a yacht and a jet, but just, being able to provide for family. So when you're having to say no to your kids, that as a dad and as a dude, that just doesn't feel good. I mean, we just don't like that. We all want to say, my kids have everything that they need. And if there's a time in life where you're not able to say that, yeah, that's super, super hard for sure. And it is a time for you to look back and say, well, at this point, money's not incredibly plentiful, but love still is, and all the caring and non-financial things that a dad does for the family is still there. But it does kind of dig deep at the soul during those periods that you're not not able to provide what you would want financially.
So how do we set a good example for our families, for our kids, our partners, or spouse on how to live well financially, where finances doesn't rule every decision we make, and we have some flexibility and freedom? How do we take our knowledge of what we've learned as now adults and share it with the next generation, our kids?
Well, I think you have a couple things. And the first one is really kind of an attitude about being purposeful with money. Okay. So one of the more important exercises that any of us can do, whether we're wealthy as far as have a high income, or if we have a low income or anything in between, is we can spend a little bit of time tracking money. Okay. So I'm the kind of person, if I have $20 in cash in my pocket, by the end of the day, it's gone. I just, I may have taken you out to lunch because I like being generous. I may have, just stopped and got a $5 Starbucks, who knows, but that $20 is gone, and $20 is not the end of the world. But if that happens every day, then that does become a noticeable amount of money. So being purposeful with our money is very important. Now with kids, you can do this in simpler ways. You can give kids allowances, and then they get to be in charge of what they buy within limits. You can, I remember very vividly, one of our kids got a birthday check for 20 or 30, or I don't know how much money it was, but he wanted to buy this little Star Wars R2-D2 thing in Target. I don't even know what it was. And, he handed his $20 to the cashier, and they didn't give him any money back. We actually had to put another $1 or $2 towards it. And he cried. He was 4 or 5 or however old, but he was like, wow, I don't have any money. So it's like, well, that's what buying stuff is. It's trading money for stuff. And in this case, he realized pretty quickly that he would have rather had the money than the stuff. Which is a good lesson because he's a cheapskate now, and he actually has a little bit of money saved up, and he doesn't spend every dollar that he has. But I think the first thing to do in any area of life where you're looking to improve is to kind of see what's happening. So be purposeful, track, maybe keep a money diary, maybe look at your look at your bank accounts, your credit cards, and see, do you have a Netflix and a Hulu and a Disney Plus and an Amazon Prime subscription? And they're each $10 or $20. So it's not a lot of money, but if you have 3 extra ones, that's $60 or $70 or $80 per month. That's $1,000 a year. And then if you're wasting another 1,000 other places, another 1,000 other places, all of a sudden it starts being very, very noticeable. So first thing is just to be purposeful and know what's happening with your money, and get your kids involved to the level that they can be involved in. Obviously, a 3-year-old can't be involved with those kind of things, but you can give a 3-year-old, 10 $1 bills, and let them kind of decide where they spend those 10 $1 bills. Or maybe they save one of them, they give one of them away, and then they have 8 of them left, and then they have some input. So I'm very, very big about being purposeful. So being purposeful is number one. And that has nothing to do with where you invest your money, has nothing to do with stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all kind of the sexy parts of financial planning. It just has to do with being purposeful and knowing where your money's going, telling it where to go, as opposed to, I'm sure you've probably had some months in your life where you're like, where the heck did my money go? I mean, I should have a surplus, but I don't. So that's number one, is be purposeful and track.
So one thing I noticed on your website and just talking with you as well is you guys did something unique for your oldest. Now that he's off to school and post-secondary and everything, going off to do that, instead of living and paying rent, you guys came up with an interesting solution. This is something that my wife and I have started years ago, looking at property and real estate and having some of that in our back pocket. So I feel a connection with you on that level. Can you explain a little bit about the idea behind getting your son out of a rental situation and into something a little bit more financially stable?
Sure. So he goes to the University of South Carolina. He's actually studying business, and he wants to get into commercial real estate, ironically. So this was kind of a great learning experience. Now, at the University of South Carolina, and I think in a lot of schools, you have to live in the dorms as a freshman. and his dorm was not as nice as a jail cell. Literally like 252 square feet for 2 boys to live in. And then there was like an adjoining bathroom and then another room with 2 other boys. And they would complain about mold on the shower curtain. So when you have 4 18-year-old teenage boys that are away from home for the first time, and they're saying that there's too much mold, then guess what? There's too much mold. So for the first year, he lived in the dorms and got the dorm experience. And I guess that's part of life, part of growing up, and it was fun. But then we started saying, within reason, we really want our children we want to give them the gift of a 4-year degree without any debt, unless they start walking not the straight and narrow, and then maybe they have to pay for some of their own schooling, because sometimes if you don't have skin in the game, you don't work hard. Now our kids are pretty hardworking. I'm confident that won't happen. So we started thinking, paying tuition is we can do that, and it's not the most expensive school. But then when you add on, and where he goes to school, on the low end you'd be looking at $600 a month for rent. On the higher end you could be at $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a month for rent. That that creates a large expense. So we said, well, what if we just start looking around and seeing if there's a way to creatively get our rent paid? So in where he goes to school in Columbia, South Carolina, the numbers work out to where this can be profitable, or at least break even. So we got a realtor, and they live, he's about 2.5 hours away from us. So that posed a few issues, but we got a good realtor. We started looking at houses, and there are lots of these little neighborhoods with houses built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Not mansions, but certainly much nicer than the dorms. They have a kitchen, which, saves money on going out to eat. And we were able to buy a house that's a 3-bedroom house. And it works out that having the 2 roommates, renting out 2 rooms for very low rent compared to the market, covers all of our expenses plus $100 or $200 a month, which ultimately we're building up a slush fund, and that's going to pay for crap that idiot kids break. So we're basically, instead of writing a check to an apartment complex for him for $600 or more and being out of pocket, we're actually making $200. Plus, we're building equity in that home. So the other boys are paying our mortgage. Now, we got that house back when I think we got a mortgage that was less than 3%. So we put as low of a down payment as we wanted to, because it doesn't mathematically make a whole lot of sense to put a big down payment on a building when mortgage rates were that low. So, we have 2 roommates they're getting the benefit of living in a house, not a nasty dorm room, a house that has a kitchen where they can keep their, they can do some cooking. They have, keep their food. They don't have to go out to the dorm cafeteria every day. And, yeah, it's a really, really good situation. And let's say the house increases in value 5% per year. I don't know if that's reasonable. It probably is. So by the time he graduates, the house has gone up 15, 20%. They've paid down the mortgage. So if we decide to sell the house, we could walk away with a pretty nice check, or we can keep the house and keep renting it. If he stays in that area, he can live there. Now, the cool thing is, and this is a little bit of a hack, if my wife and I would have been the sole owners of the home, and I'm talking U.S. laws, I don't know where all your listeners are from, but if my wife and I's name would have been on the deed only, it would have technically been a rental property, even though our son was living there, and then the property taxes would have been about 4 or 5 times higher than how we did it. So the way that we deeded the house was it's owned 1/3 by me, 1/3 by my wife, and 1/3 by our son. So he had the cool experience of going to the attorney's office, signing papers, going through the whole process of buying a property. He was in on the decisions on how much we would offer for the properties. He had to sign the offer sheet. So that was, number one, a cool experience. But number two, it saves us a lot of money in property taxes. And it just, it helps him to know he's a property owner. He owns 1/3 of that, so he better not burn it down, and he better not let any shady college stuff happen. And he's really good. We call him the property manager. He cuts the grass. He keeps things going. He's pretty handy as far as changing lights and things like that. And in today's YouTube world, you can YouTube how to fix anything. So it's been a really, really great situation for us. And it's, it's literally making us money in the form of equity plus a few dollars every month. And there's also a lot to be said to getting kids away from other kids. So if you live in an apartment building with a bunch of other kids, now my kid's not, but all the other kids are drunken idiots. And drunken idiots do stupid things. So, having a house where there's not 100 drunken idiots, there's less crazy stuff that could happen. So it's been a win-win-win. But maybe the biggest factor is just the sense of ownership and that he owns the place, he's managing it. And, it's a big responsibility, but some of the other college kids that don't wake up until 1 or 2 in the afternoon, he doesn't have that option because he has to cut the grass because that's his job and it's his house. So it's a really, really cool thing.
Yeah. I love that he's got some skin in the game. That is great to see that because it's not his parents' place. He's part of this, and what a great experience to be able to get your son down there and signing the papers and pride of ownership. Everything is all included. I love that. It's a great.
It's a great thing. Now another hack that helped out is when he got his driver's license at age 16, we made him an authorized user on one of our credit cards, and that was just for him to buy gas. So he would just, I think it's a Bank of America card. It's a red card, and he has the red credit card. So when he would always put gas in his car with the red credit card, or if we needed groceries and we were tired and he was 17, hey, go to the store and just put, buy whatever we need on the red credit card. So he's an authorized user, and that card has a pretty high limit, but we never really use it. So it has a $20,000 or $30,000 limit. We charge a couple $100 a month on gas on it and then pay it off every month. So because technically he's a borrower on the loan as well. So his income, which probably was literally $1,000, was factored in, but his credit rating was also, and his credit rating, I think, was a 770, just because he had 3 or 4 or 5, 3 years, I believe, of continuously made on time credit card payments in his name. He didn't pay them, but it was attached to his Social Security number. So all the things that credit affects when he graduates, when he goes to get his own cell phone, if he goes to borrow money to buy a house, credit affects all those. So he'll get the best cell phone rate because they're not going to surcharge him for bad credit. Even car insurance has a credit component. So if you trust your kids, you can make them an authorized user on a credit card, and then that helps their credit. Now, another hack is your kid doesn't have to know about it. So if your kid is a little crazy, you can get a credit card in their name and then just use it to get your own gas, and they don't even have to know that the card exists. But if our son Evan, he has that card, he could go out and buy a $20,000 item tomorrow, and we have no recourse because he's an authorized user to use the card. So you do have to trust your kid, but when they're young, they don't necessarily have to have possession of that credit card either. So
what age would you say?
Great hack.
What age would you say is a good age to start the process of creating that credit?
When they get their driver's licenses, I think is a good time. At 16, you're still immature and you can still make really, really horrible decisions, but you're also old enough to understand consequences. So you put some rules. Actually, our twins just got their driver's licenses. They're 15 and a half. And we just got them credit cards too. And, I threaten their lives and threaten violence and horrible pain to be inflicted on them if they buy anything other than gas or what we tell them to buy. But, and they won't, but, in theory, yes, they could go to Best Buy and they could buy a $5,000 television and they're authorized to use the account. So you have to trust your kids. And if your kids are just not at a maturity level where they could handle that, then of course don't do it. But it's a really, really good hack because your credit score does affect a lot of areas of your life. So 2 hacks there for you that you can try out with your kids.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping for here for Dad Space is how can we set up the next generation for success? Because you can walk into a university college campus, they've got the tables lined up of all these credit cards they're offering to students. Mm-hmm. Here in Canada, they do that all the time. And you get kids sucked into a void, an abyss of credit and debt, and they're struggling just to survive. And they don't have the good habits created over time to be good with a credit card. So,
well, and one thing you mentioned is habits, and I say this with grace and with mercy and with love, but all of us, we are in our financial situation because of our choices and what we've done. Now, some of us have been, we've had harder paths, and there's no question some people have easier paths. So this is not to say if you don't have money, you're a bad person. It's just to say that you probably haven't developed good money habits, and, maybe because you weren't taught, or maybe you were taught, you just chose not to listen. But, there are certain, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 money behaviors that if you do them, you're going to have a really hard money life. And if you don't do them, you're going to have a good money life. And if it were only about earning a lot of money, pro athletes, rock stars, they would never go broke, but they do too. The only difference between them and us is they go broke and they have a heck of a lot more fun on the way down because they're driving Lamborghinis and everything else where we're not. But, we have to take personal responsibility for where we're going. Maybe what happened to you in the past was not your fault, but once you're a grown up, you kind of have to say, my past, I'm not going to let it destroy me. And I'm going to make, I'm going to shift, and I'm going to make good decisions moving forward. We can't change what's happened in the past, and we can't change if we were dealt a more difficult hand. And it's totally legitimate to say that some people were dealt more difficult hands than others. I mean, there's no question there. But when you get to a point of adulthood, you just have to make that decision that you don't let those difficult circumstances defeat you. And that's hard. I mean, there's no question that it's hard sometimes. But when you teach your kids that from a young age, you had a $20 allowance and you spent all 20. Well, guess what? Now you don't have any more money. That's the way life works. So next time you get your allowance, you'll have more money. But until then, you don't have money. And that's kind of a good lesson, because when you're a grown up and your paycheck is gone, well, guess what? You don't have any money till next paycheck unless you've put some aside.
So your thoughts on like vanity purchasing, keeping up with the Joneses, all of that kind of stuff as it relates to our finances. How can we get out of the trap of always wanting to be just one better than our friends, our family, our neighbors? How do we separate ourselves from these vanity purchases that are everywhere and so convenient? You can have it on your doorstep tomorrow. How do we keep and avoid that?
I think you have to really, again, go back to being purposeful, and you have to think, what is truly, truly important to me? Okay, so nobody's ever been on their deathbed and said, well, I mean, I had a Mercedes that was $80,000. If I would have had the $90,000 or $100,000 Mercedes, I would have been happier. Most people would say, maybe if I would have had if I didn't have that car, I could have worked less and seen my kids more and spent more time with them and had less stress. So we have to consciously ask ourselves, what is actually important to us and why? Now, there's nothing wrong with nice stuff. There's nothing wrong with having nice stuff. It's when the nice stuff has you and has me, then it becomes a problem. So, we all have areas where we like to spend a little bit of extra money. Once a year, I like to go to a really, really nice restaurant and spend an exorbitant amount of money. But, if it's in the budget at the time, that's a good thing because it's enjoying the fruits of your labor. But if I'm going out to that several $100 dinner several times a week or every month, just to impress you, then it's what's in my heart that's causing the problem. So remember, we talked about what you are becomes amplified by money or lack of money. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about. If I'm a showy person that doesn't believe that I have a lot of value, then I'm going to need the showy stuff, the name brands, the jewelry, and those kind of things. But if I believe that having that even without money, I'm just a good dad. I love my kids. I take care of them. Then the name brand labels don't enhance that. Now, when the budget permits it, to have nice stuff is fine. It just has to be within your financial reality. But many people, and at times I guess I would even fall in this category, we don't live within what our financial reality is. And that's a problem.
So when people come to you, Dave, and they want to work with you, where do you kind of start with somebody who's struggling financially but really has the desire to do better? Where's a good starting point for somebody listening right now that's like, I know I need to make a change. I got it. I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know where to start. What do I do?
Right. So when you have a pain or you're sick, you go to the doctor, and the doctor, they get a baseline. They might weigh you. They might do some blood work. They might, they look down your throat. They make you say, ah, and what they're doing is they're using their expertise to make a diagnosis, but they need information. Because if you tell your doctor, I have a headache, there's probably 100 different reasons you might have a headache, some of which might be you're just not drinking enough water, and others might be you have a brain tumor. So the doctor has to perform an analysis and use their expertise. Well, it's the same thing with money, whether you're working with a financial advisor or if you're just kind of working with yourself. And I don't think it's ever good to work with yourself. You should, at the very least, work with a friend or an accountability partner, spouse, partner, anything like that, because we all tend to just not make great decisions on our own. But make a diagnosis. I mean, look at, honestly, what is my monthly income? Like, literally, how much money do I bring home from paychecks? And then literally look at, what are my set expenses? The things that I have to pay, the mortgage, the rent, if there are car payments, you have to eat. So what's a reasonable amount of money that you're spending on food? And then what's the not reasonable amount of money that you're spending on food? And then kind of say, and I've done financial literacy classes with some lower income people. And I've always had people say some version of, holy crap, I should have ... left every month, $500 or $200 or $1,000, but I never have any money. How is this possible? And the way that it's possible, I had one girl at my class, and we did a class every month, a group class, and then everybody had a meeting, an individual meeting with me, kind of halfway between. And she told me, she said, "You're going to kill me, but each of the last 2 weeks, I spent $80 each week at Starbucks." Now, I don't know how much money you make. Maybe you can afford $80 a week. I can tell you she could not afford $80. This was not in the budget. It simply wasn't. So it's like, well, you have two choices, really. You can have $80 or you can have that coffee. You can't have both. And in your reality, you don't have the excess cash to be able to reasonably afford that luxury. So what do you want to do? Do you want to be poor and have coffee, or do you want to work towards financial freedom and make your own coffee? And that's the simple choice. And there's no, I don't think you can really soften it. I mean, that's just it. That's the choice. Do you want to be poor with coffee or be working towards a better future and make your own coffee? And she got it. I mean, she definitely understood, and seeing those numbers really hit home to her. And I think when most of us when we see the actual facts of the numbers, then, it's kind of undeniable. And so do a diagnosis, do a financial diagnosis, look at how much money you're bringing in, look at how much money is going out, and then look at how much money should go out. Because there certainly are more inexpensive ways to purchase some things. We all have to eat, but we don't necessarily have to go out to eat 3 or 4 meals a day. Now, the other part of that is I'll never be the guy that's talking about cut. I want all of us to make ourselves more valuable to the economy so that our income is higher, so that we have more margin and more resources, because it's not all about, well, what can I cut out of my budget? Because there are things that money buys that does provide joy. I mean, family vacations and just, we need stuff. So making ourselves more valuable to the overall economy. I've told my kids, and I tell everybody, we're all paid based on how easy it is to replace us. So it doesn't mean God loves you more if you make more money, but it means the economy places a bigger premium. So if you need brain surgery, the guy that's going to cut your head open has a whole lot more training in brain surgery than I do, and more skill. So that's why he makes more money. And that's just a fact. So make yourself more valuable by being able to do things that not that many other people are able to do, or that not that many other people are willing to do. Because the easy jobs are easily replaceable, and they're not necessarily going to pay a lot. That's just a fact. I don't even like that fact because I would like to be highly paid at a really easy job.
Dave, that is a great point to make. And I like the idea of adding value to yourself and making yourself more valuable by just what you know, what you learn, how you grow, who you are. Those are all things that will increase your income. And I love the fact that you don't say it's all about cutting, because I hear that's a lot of common responses. Just cut until you can make it. And there's a lot of people who are living like that, and that's scary because sometimes they're cutting.
You can only
the
cut
wrong
so much.
stuff.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. There's no question. And even, going back to the value, let's say you work for a factory, and obviously you don't have direct control over how well the factory does financially. But if that factory ever has to lay people off due to financial issues, you want to be that guy where everybody's like, look, we're not laying Dave off. He's so valuable. We're laying those other people off because they're lazy and they show up late, a couple times a week. Dave is really good. So as long as we can keep anybody, we're keeping Dave because he's valuable. Or when a promotion comes along, the people who make those decisions are going to say, there's only one logical choice for this promotion. That's Dave. He deserves it. He's valuable and he benefits the company. These other people, they're always an excuse. They show up late. They're sick all the time. And, so being valuable is incredibly important. So we have to all spend less than we earn, but that gets much easier to do when you earn more. So earning more is half of the equation. Absolutely 100% for sure. And as much as I sometimes hate the reality, we're all kind of paid what we're worth to an extent. So we have to be worth more. And that's just a reality of life.
So Dave, where do we leave off for dads, for families? I have, for this podcast, for Dad Space, 75% of my audience are female listening in, which I'm thrilled with. Okay. So I have parents listening, single moms, single dads, parents listening to us today. Where do we leave people off today so that they can build some confidence in themselves? They can find that value that maybe they haven't been really focused on personally, so that we can kind of elevate everyone. I want that whole thing about rising tides lifts all ships. Let's lift up some ships today and make people understand their value and how they can provide for their family. What do we leave them with?
Let's leave them with that words matter, attitudes matter, and relationships matter. So let's not say, and let's not have that feeling of, number one, we don't have money because of other people. Let's stop in today's point in time and let's say whatever happened in the past, let's learn from it and let's make improvements today. In our country, it's the other political party's fault. Whoever the other political party is, it's always their fault that I'm not in the position I want to be. And I'm not saying not to be involved with politics. I think we should all be informed. But if the guy that you wanted to be president didn't get elected or vice versa, you still can be a good person and still can succeed. Okay? So let's take responsibility for ourselves moving forward. And let's teach our kids to have a good relationship with money and with stuff. Okay, so you can do that with allowances, giving them a budget, letting them buy some of their own stuff. So if you give your kids a set amount of money for school clothes and they get to pick whatever they want, and maybe the Under Armour t-shirt is $50 and maybe the Target brand shirt is $10 and you can get 5 of them, let them make that decision. Now, of course, you can bail them out if they buy too much of the expensive stuff and don't have enough, but let them make some of those decisions that they're getting to determine how their monies are being allocated. Let's teach our kids to be generous. Nobody ever went broke by being generous. So helping the world, I think, is very important. And let's also teach our kids that the intangible parts of money and how we handle money affect our lives. So sometimes if a grown-up is really stressed out about money, you get home, you're stressed out. You're not the best mom. You're not the best dad because you're stressed out. So that's a big motivation to have money under control, because stress doesn't help anything. And when you're worried about paying bills, and then maybe you get laid off and there's no emergency fund, again, I'm not putting blame. I'm just saying that we all need to be striving to be financially sound. And that is done, in some baby steps. Just really quickly, if you get the basics, so if you get your budget under control, B for budget, you're going to be looking really good. If you get A for allocation, meaning that you have different buckets of assets, you're going to be really good. So if you have an emergency fund, you have some investments that can grow, maybe some real estate, and money in different buckets, you're going to be looking good. S is systems. So if you get some financial systems in place, like maybe setting up your bills on auto pay so they get paid, maybe systematically paying some debt down, so making $10 extra per month payment, maybe putting a few dollars of every paycheck in a savings account, just systems. If you get your I, insurance, you get that in place, because insurance does really nothing else but protect your money. So when stuff happens, and if I hurt you, either my money's going to pay for your damages or my insurance is. So I better have my insurance the right way. And then C of basics is caring. How can you use your money to care for the world? Ultimately, I think most of us like giving money away and helping people. And then S is support. Who do you need in your life to support you? Now, if you're a complicated business owner, you need a CPA, you need an attorney. Maybe if you're just someone who's younger, you just need an accountability buddy that say, hey, we're going to both kind of stick to a budget, but we all need support. So budget, allocation, systems, insurance, caring, and support. And if you're getting all of those either kind of in shape or moving towards in shape, believe me when I tell you, your life is going to be better.
Taking us right back to the basics is what I love. It's great, Dave. Thank you. This is great.
Yep. I love it. Easy stuff.
People listening, Dave, they might be interested. They may want to continue the conversation. What do we do to reach out? Where do we find you?
Well, definitely, in addition to your podcast, check out my show, www.weeklywealthpodcast.com. We talk about all kinds of financial topics. Maybe 60 or 70% of our topics are geared towards business owners and how they handle money, but a lot of them are geared towards everybody. And then if you have any money questions at all, I'm always happy. With Zoom, I can meet with anybody and we could have a 30-minute conversation. So you can email me, david@parallelfinancial.com. That's david@parallelfinancial.com. Always happy. There's no obligation. We can point you in the right direction. If there are some major next steps, we can decide if we're going to take those. But sometimes it's really just a matter of, hey, if you're in a kind of a crisis situation, let's solve the immediate crisis, and then let's build in a little emergency fund. And if you're a complicated situation with lots of assets and tax issues and things like that, we can provide advice as well. But, I've been at both ends of the spectrum, and I just know that when we have our money working for us, and when we know that we have kind of our each area of our financial life is moving in the right direction, we just sleep better. And as dudes, we kind of know that that's part of our calling, is to be sound financially. So let's all look to be sound financially, and yeah, let's make it a great year.
Awesome. This is Dave here on the Dad Space podcast, talking all things money and taking us back to the basics. I love it. There's so many good things here. I've got notes that I'm going to be going through. There's stuff I'm going to be talking to my kids about. And Dave, thank you for making time for us and inspiring us to do better as dads and as leaders in our families. Appreciate it.
No, I love it, and I love the topic of money, and I love the topic of fatherhood. They're both obviously a huge part of my life, so I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with your audience.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Everybody go check out. We'll have all the links in the show notes as always, and I would encourage you to go over and just even say thank you to Dave for giving up his time today and sharing some great practical things that we can all put into place today to help our families. Thank you, Dave.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, let us know here at Dad Space. looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode, right here of Dad Space. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad. Thank you.